Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Digital Nomad World weekly series. I'm Becky, and once again, I will be your host. Today, I'm going to be talking with my longtime friend, Mikey Lythcott. For professional reasons, he prefers Michael, so it depends how you meet Mikey, what you're going to call him. And we're going to be talking about his 16 years on the road as a digital nomad and making friends around the world. Mikey, welcome to the show.
Hello. Yeah, actually, it's probably closer going on almost 20 years now. But yeah, well, yeah, 16 to 18. It depends on which if you really want to count when I first started traveling, period. That goes back to when I was 17 years old. So we're talking, almost 30 years, 28 years. Yeah, I'm getting old. Been on the road
Yeah,
for a
you're
while.
certainly an OG digital nomad and can't wait for people to hear your story and how you've been traveling so long. So yeah, can you first give us your background and let us know how did you start traveling? What do you do to travel and keep
Well.
going like this?
This brings back quite a lot of memories. Yeah, when I was 17, I used to shoot photographs of bands. That was kind of my thing. From 17 to 24, I shot live bands, all over the country. Well, definitely all over local shows, but festivals and just traveling. And I would go see a lot of bands on tour. I used to follow a band called Slater Kinney back in the day. I saw them 29 times in a ton of places. So we'd actually organize. This is, I guess, this is before even Friendster. We organize group trips through our forum or chat groups. Remember back in the day when you used to have those like AOL chat groups? Yeah, and we'd organize friends to go do like Philly, New York, and Boston, or like Chicago and Detroit. So I would fly up, get a car, and just have a bunch of people pile in, and we just travel, and that kind of started my fascination with traveling. And then yeah, I spent until I was 29. I traveled all over the U.S. and Canada. Just I was just always whenever I had time off from work, um, I would do a big trip. My first big real trip was when I was 21 years old, turning 22. It was in July. My birthday's in July. I had bought a motorcycle and I drove it from Atlanta to the West Coast to San Francisco area, uh, well, Los Angeles area technically, and up through San Francisco, up the West Coast all the way to Vancouver, and then I went a little bit up north into BC, but just a short like half day trip, and then I drove back uh, through British Columbia, then down through like Wyoming, Montana, Dakotas, through the Midwest, in Chicago, Tennessee, back into Georgia. And that was like a month long road trip. I actually did the trip to go to a music festival in Olympia, Washington. And so I made it like a big month-long trip there and back. So it was fun. And then I was like, oh, this is really what I love doing. And then when I was, I guess, 25 in 2004, that's when the business that I do right now, web design, that's when I actually left my job working for a big record label to do web design. And our first clients were, um, people on a label like Kelly Osbourne was one of my clients, Leonard Skinner. Uh, it was a bunch of like fairly well-known pop rock acts. Actually, some of them I still work with today. Smashing Pumpkins, I still do. Um, but yeah, it was fun. We did we worked with a lot of major artists, and ended up working for a bunch of major record labels. But that allowed me to work from home basically before anyone worked from home as a just a thing you do. So yeah, so I've been kind of working the laptop lifestyle since 2004, 2005 is kind of when I actually really took off because I moved from Raleigh, North Carolina, where I was living, to Seattle, and that's when I went full on, full steam, working for myself, doing the business, and we uh, at its peak we had like 8 employees, and yeah, so I just used the time to just travel and as long as I had a laptop, just like we all do now. It wasn't as easy back then because you didn't have quite the wireless and power that we had now, but it was still perfectly fine. So yeah, and in 2009, I decided, all right, I've done most of America a million times, most of Canada a million times. And in 2009, with the girl I was seeing at the time, we went to my first real international trip where I left North America. I did it was London, Barcelona, Paris, back to London, and we did Wales in that. And then I was like, oh, this is really fun. So then I just kind of became a thing. I would just take off as much free time as I could or travel and work. And then I started going to Europe a lot. And I started doing summer stints where I would do like, for example, in 2010, I did a summer in Vancouver. 2011, 2012, I did summers in Barcelona. And 2013, I did Lisbon. And then 2014, that's when I moved to Lisbon, where it became my home base when I wasn't at home for the next, well, up until now, so about 11 years. Um, well, 10 and a half, 11 years almost. And while I never officially moved and lived in Portugal, at the time until COVID, Portugal allowed you to extend your tourist visa to 6 months. So I would stay for 6 months and then I would travel for 3 to 4. Usually, sometimes I would split it up. Sometimes I would just do a full 3 month. I would just pick a place like Asia and just slow roll across. And then by the time I was done, fly home, see family, friends in Atlanta, um, or New York, because I was living in New York for 9 years before I left for Portugal in 2014. And then, so by the time I would get back from the road and then being home to visit friends, my 3 month period would pass. I'd come back, so I wouldn't have to, I wouldn't have to deal with a proper visa. I would just show back up, so kind of off the grid, but it worked, kind of, working the system, but within it. And that's what I've done for the longest time. Actually, as of right now, I'm stateside and I'm considering being stateside a lot more. Uh, I'm currently based just south of Asheville, North Carolina, and that's where home is going to be now for yeah the semi-indefinite future. I'm looking to purchase some property, and even though it's not really the best time to move home to the United States, I think it's good to be home. So, at my age, my travel priorities are changing a bit, and I think having a stable base that's home is kind of where I'm at now. But I mean, I'm already literally just before this call, I was booking Brazil, which I'm leaving for in 28 days. Going to do a few weeks in Brazil before I'm back to Portugal, and then I'm going to be doing my first trip to Cape Verde. So I'm really excited about that. So I'm currently in the planning phase, and then I'm doing my like first real big Africa trip that I'm planning for September. So I've done North Africa. I've done Morocco countless times. I was in Tunisia recently. I've done Egypt, which I really want to get back to. That might be the end point of my trip coming up. Um, but I haven't really done. I actually haven't done like the interior of Africa, and I think now, I've done Europe to death. I've done Asia to death, even though I haven't been to Asia for a while. COVID kind of put the kibosh in that for a little bit, so I'm looking forward to getting back there. But right now, I really want to go see something completely different and new. So I've been really doing South America lately. I did last year. I did Peru, Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, a bunch of places. And now, right now, my big thing is Africa because it's like the next, uncharted territory for me in terms of expanding my already big reach of 74 countries. So I'm looking to, inch toward 100. And Africa is gonna get me there. That's kind of the big thing right now. So yeah, that's a big long-winded answer for the last 16, 18 years of international travel. Yeah.
I mean, this is the story you would expect, I think, from such an OG digital nomad, but also like the whispers of like, oh, I finally need a home base, but I'm already booking things to Brazil and Africa. It's a
Yeah.
really lovely idea, Mikey, but I wouldn't be surprised if you all, either
Yeah.
you,
I mean, I
you
think,
purchase something and you're not there very often, or because I feel like
yeah.
these true OG nomads, they continue, they have to get on the road again at some point. That's
Yeah.
part of our
And
nature. Yeah.
I've always not like disliked the word nomad. I've always preferred the word traveler, explorer. I mean, I guess, it sounds kind of cliche. I say I don't like putting a label on myself. I've just, I've just always like when I was a kid, I always wanted to see the world, and I just figured a way to do it, and it's just what I've done. I mean, there's ups and downs, like when you're gone, when you're living half, if not more than half the year in a foreign country that's not technically home, you do sacrifice. I'm sure this is a common theme you get. You do sacrifice some of the comforts of, stable relationships, stability in the sense of like what really is home, the friends you have. I mean, I've got friends all over the world, which is great, but it's also not the easiest to keep track with everybody when you're everywhere. And definitely relationships have been um, difficult to say the least. But the sacrifices, things I've seen in places I've been are, you know, once in a lifetime. And I know that also sounds a little cheesy, but it's true. I've got my internal bucket list, and I've seen so many cool things. I mean, I've walked the Great Wall of China. I've stood next to the pyramids. I've run with well, walked with the bulls. I didn't run with them. I've been to a lot of places that have been considered, super iconic. I went to Machu Picchu. All those things that, well, I mean, I guess they make for great photo ops, but for me, it really is. I mean, I could die tomorrow, and I've almost died once during one of my trips. So it's good to know that I've at least gotten to see a whole bunch of cool stuff, and that I have a whole bunch more cool stuff that I'm going to be crossing off in the next couple of years. So yeah, it's just never stop exploring. I guess kind of motto, you know.
Absolutely. I have a couple of questions from your story that you told us. First of all, like how did you get into taking pictures and photos for bands? Because as we know, that led to your
Um,
web design. And I'm curious, like that's not something that
yeah,
the
wow,
average person is able to
that's
connect with.
bringing back old school.
Yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, back in the earliest days of the internet, we're talking, 98, 2000. So, I was what, like just out of high school, starting college. And, I had discovered a passion for photography. It's actually what I went to university for, that and filmmaking. I don't, it's just ironic I don't really do that now. But back then it was a big passion. And, I used to be in a couple of bands. That was always fun. I was part of the like local punk hardcore scene, punk indie hardcore scene. And I just started going to a lot of shows. That's what me and my friends did. We go to shows, and I just started shooting because I figured, what do I like to shoot? I'm like, well, I'm not really good at people. I'm not really good at landscapes. I'm really good at shooting bands. Yeah, I was okay at it. And then I started a website called bandphotography.com. Greatest name, huh? But it actually got really popular. I mean, and so I had to teach myself how to build websites and how to do that. So I taught myself how to do that. And I think at its height, I had 350 bands on the site. And of course, that opened me up to meeting a lot of record labels, bands, managers, which led to at the beginning of my career. So I was actually working at a record label called Sanctuary Group. They handle a lot of really, really major artists across a bunch of genres. And so that was kind of like, getting into the music industry on that side. And then, I decided it was time to kind of, work for myself and branch out. So a few bands hired me to do some work for them, and then the label, like I said before, was my first client. So they hired me to do a lot of their web dev stuff, which it's spiraled into meeting a lot of really cool people in the industry. So we ended up having some really really amazing, really cool clients. And music industry was our big, was our big focus for a very long time, back when you could make money in the music industry. But yeah, so like it afforded me the option of traveling some more. Like I did there's this band called Census Fail. They've been a really popular band in the punk emo hardcore scene for over 20 years now at this point. And in '05, they hired me to come along with them on their tour for the entire month. I filmed the whole documentary, which was on their re-release of their popular album. It was like a DVD B-side. Had a few of the bands of Montreal, Raina Maria hired me to do their live DVDs. So it was kind of fun. I was traveling a bit, and and so that also was like, at that point I was traveling quite a bit around the United States, and having this job where I was actually, not making a ton of money, but making enough money to live and work on my own without having to be tied to a desk, kind of really got the juices flowing. So between like let's say '05 and '09, that's when the business really took off. I mean, we were doing some really major clients. Like actually one of the coolest stories I have, so we were working for Universal Music Group. So we did all the Lonely Island web stuff. Those are the guys who did like Dick in a Box, Mother Lover, like all the SNL digital skits. And we got actually invited to one of the tapings of SNL. It was Taylor Swift was the musical guest back when she was doing her last country album, and Neil Patrick Harris was the host, and we got to sit like right up front. I mean, talking like you don't realize how small that soundstage is, and like it's crazy because no one said when you get into the soundstage. So we were right in the front, like as the camera panned, you could almost see us, but like to ruin live television, all I had to do was this, like stand up. Like no one said, "Hey, don't stand up." They just kind of trusted us. But it was really fun, like so then afterwards we got like invited to the after party. So we're sitting upstairs with like, Seth Meyers, the whole SNL crew, Taylor Swift, all these crazy celebrities. We're having a party, just getting hammered. It's really fun. And I remember we were sitting down in like it was like a two-floor club venue, whatever. And I'm talking to my friend who got us the gig. She worked for Universal, and we're sitting there talking, and I'm like, who the heck is being loud behind us? Turn on, I'm like, oh, hey, Taylor Swift. I ended up having a little chat with her for a minute. And then I was like, all right, cool, great show. I'll see you later. And then like as we're leaving at 4 o'clock when this, last call, we're leaving, and as I'm walking out, Taylor walks by and goes, have a nice night, Mike. I'm like, you too, Taylor Swift. So yeah, we had some pretty fun stories, from being able to do that. Working for myself and having this business. I went to a Law and Order party once, where I was hired to shoot and got to meet all the bunch of celebrities from Law and Order, and got to meet Mariska. That was kind of cool. She was very business, but I was like, I wanted to be like, you're so cool, but I was like, can I take your picture? And at some point, I was talking to a woman for like 10 minutes. Great conversation. I'm like, all right, listen, this has been great. I got to go back to shooting. My friend goes, you know who that was, right? I'm like, no. I'm like, that's the hot DA. I'm like, oh my God, that's the hot DA. She didn't have her glasses on. I was like, oh my God, that's so. So yeah, a lot of fun stories, but yeah, but I know I'm getting a little off tangent here, but yeah. So, and I guess the point is that, just, working for myself has allowed me a lot of experiences to go have some fun, and being able to work for myself meant that I was able to travel and get out there and not be tied down. And it just translated into, around '09, I was like, all right, I've been having all these fun experiences in New York or traveling East Coast, West Coast, running around the country, either shooting bands or just traveling because I could. And I was like, there's an entire world that I haven't even seen yet. So in '09, that's when the international bug bit me, and I haven't looked back. Given the sacrifices I had to make for that, but I still haven't looked back. And I mean, I know every year I'm like, all right, this is the last year I'm going to be on the road. And then literally as this morning, I'm booking like multiple continent trips, or at least planning and booking multiple continent trips.
What I love about
So
this, Mikey, is that you really are just, this is self-made. It sounds like you just had this passion for photography, you studied it, you studied filmmaking, and then you made this website that got you these connections. And then are you self-taught with web design, or did you ever study it formally?
yeah, yeah, totally self-taught. It wasn't what I went to school for. It just became like I realized, yeah, it was around '05 when I left the record label to work for myself with some business partners. I had another guy named Jared I worked with. He was our dev. I was a designer. We had a guy named Chris, and we've been working with this guy named HM now for the last 20 plus years. We met him through music industry connections, and that actually because he was the manager of my Chemical Romance, and through that, we got a ton of work. I hooked up with a ton of major record labels that really put the business to the point where we were making, good money and giving us the ability to live and travel. And, so it was a big career starter for all of us. And it opened up the possibility to be on the road. And that's exactly what I did with it. So yeah, it was kind of, and it just me being the social person I am and the people that I met on the road then open up people I could travel with, and it just then you go from one place to the next, and you see people that you've met, and then you meet their friends, and you meet their friends' friends, and all of a sudden you're running around the planet and seeing all these people that you've met and traveling with them, and it just kind of becomes this blossom into this whole lifestyle. And that's yeah, it was around '09, 2010 that the lifestyle of the living in New York but traveling quite a few months out of the year and living part-time in other countries that's when that bug kind of took and it really rolled with it well into right now, you know. Um, but I
Wanted
would
to ask
say like
you
the
also,
goal.
I wanted to ask you, Mikey, like, because when I ask people, to prepare for the interviews, I say, can you send me your
Yeah.
bio? And in your bio, you said, my superpower is making friends around the world and connecting with people. And we've done a few episodes actually about loneliness and building community. I think a lot of people struggle, working from other countries to connect with people and they feel
Yeah.
isolated. So I would love for you to share because it really does sound like you have this super.
Um,
How do you connect with people so so often? Is
yeah, well,
you know?
yeah, so I have this I'm trying to describe the best way to like, having this desire to see a lot of places is kind of the first step in everything I do when I travel. I always want to go and see something unique, something I wouldn't get to see, something that I know I'm privileged to be able to see. And in doing so, you end up in a lot of places where you don't know anybody. And the one downside, I think, and speaking of the whole loneliness aspect, is um, when you travel, yeah, I mean, I'd say 9/10 of my travels I do solo. Once in a while I get someone who can come along. It's not something that everyone else can do quite so easily. And you go to some of the places that are really far away and completely different culture. And yeah, I mean, there are times it's gotten pretty lonely, but the good thing is, I mean, I've always been an outgoing person. I think, especially going back to my days of shooting bands, I got kind of used to, just you just have to be social. You're meeting all these cool people, a lot of the people you look up to. And then, you go to festivals, you just meet people. And it's just, I don't know. I guess I've just been really easy at bringing people together. I had one friend go, one friend told me one time I was in LA and like I have this thing whenever I go to a place where I'm visiting a friend, I'll bring all my other friends who don't know each other together and we'll all like hang out and they'll all end up becoming friends. My friend goes, "You know what you are, Mike? You're a professional friend." I'm like, "I'll take it. I like it." And then I remember I was doing a walking tour in Porto and yeah, they were like this actually goes back to the question. The woman asked everyone like, if you had a superpower, what would it be? And my superpower was like, well, I'm really good at bringing people together. I can't tell you how many people I've introduced who are now married or getting married or dating. I'm pretty good at putting couples together. It's just, I could either choose to be boring or choose to be exciting. And I've just chosen to be exciting. And I'm just really good at, I mean, I'm just good at talking to people. I know it's not what everyone else is quite too good at, but for me, it just comes natural. I can go up to someone and I'm not afraid to say hello because I think also I was one of the last, people my age, I'm 45. We were the last generation, I think, who didn't grow up on your phones or iPads or screens. So like if you wanted to be social, you had to go up and talk to someone. You had to go up and say hi, and, so I think that's a skill that wasn't lost on me, and I kind of just took it, and it's just applied to being around the world. And when you're in foreign places, especially when let's say you end up at like at a hostel, when you're 25 or 30, running around in some place you've never been that's completely different from where you've been. Uh, but you're in a place where everyone else is also a fellow traveler. It just becomes natural that you say, "Hey guys, I'm gonna go check out these ruins. Do you want to come with me?" Versus going alone because I don't want to go alone. Which means you probably don't want to go alone. And people are usually like, "Yeah." And next thing you know, you're having drinks with them at 4 o'clock in the morning the next night. So, and it's just pretty easy, but it makes the adventure so much better when you're not just seeing all these new places, but you're also, making friends. Most of the people I still talk to this day, people I've traveled with again, people I've adventured with, people that I still visit and hang out with and we keep in touch with after all these years. Even some people I've met maybe just a handful of times, but we still consider ourselves really close friends. But life on the road, because it's weird when you're at home, it's really hard to meet people. Everyone's closed off. When you're on the road, everybody wants to say hello. So it's like it makes it kind of easy. You know? Yeah.
Absolutely. I found that to be true as well. I'm going to tie this in. There's a reason I'm asking you this question, but do you have the maximum number of Facebook friends? Like you're just maxed out?
Ooh. That's a good question. I didn't know there was a maximum. I think I'm at least, because I know on Instagram I have 25 or 3,000. I'm probably about the same on Facebook, but yeah, I haven't kept count so much. I've not been as active on social media in terms of posting pictures. I post stories all the time, but I haven't been as active on socials as I used to be. Um, But yeah, I know for a while I definitely had quite a well small following, but there are people that I knew. It wasn't just randoms. It was mostly people that I've just known from being to 75 countries or 74 countries. It's gonna be 75 soon.
The reason I'm asking you
Yeah.
this is the first day I met you, you shared a story you've already alluded to about how you almost died.
Yeah.
And it actually ends up being connected to Facebook. And from
Yeah.
the way you friends, the number of friends you have, it actually ended up, I would say, saving your life. Can you share this story
Yeah.
with us?
Oh, of course, yeah. It's a story I haven't told in a little while. It happened back in 2018. It was August 2018, I believe, August 18th. So I had a friend of mine. I had met her in Thailand back in February, and we've been keeping in touch. Again, as you do. We ended up, like, I met her. We ended up traveling together through Thailand for a bit. And she was like, "Oh, hey, in August I have time off work." She was a teacher at the time in Korea. I was in Lisbon. I was like, "Oh, that's perfect because my tourist visa runs out in August. I'm going to hit the road." So she's like, "Let's go to Asia. Let's do Bali. Let's do a few other places." So we booked everything, and crazy enough, the week before we left, there was a big earthquake in Bali, and there was some activity, and people were saying, "Oh, it's maybe things are, because it's I mean it's an area that gets a lot of earthquake and a lot of stuff that happens on a regular basis." But we're like, "Oh, I'm sure it'll be fine. This is going to be important later." So yeah, we flew in. I flew in from Lisbon through Indonesia. I'm sorry, through Malaysia. She flew in from Korea, and we got in about the same time. And we got to the hotel, and it was 9 o'clock, so they had already closed their dinner. We're like, "Well, I'm hungry. You're hungry. We've been traveling," and I rented a scooter because she was cute, and I was trying to impress her. And I actually am a
Bali.
very avid. Yeah. Actually, I mean, I've been riding motorcycles since I was 19, so
Yeah.
so I was fine with it. We drove into town, into Ubud, and, we were having fun, having a few drinks and having dinner. A few hours after, I was like, okay, I'm driving home. So I spent the last 3 hours drinking water, of course, because, I knew I had to drive us home, but we're having fun. As the evening winded down around 3 o'clock, everything's closing. We went to drive back to the hotel, which is kind of in the jungle. I was completely sober, by the way. And we're almost home. It was maybe an 8-minute drive total. We were about a minute away, and we're coming up this hill, and it has a right curve. It's middle of the night, and as I'm coming through, there's this truck coming by. It's really bright. I'm like, "Oh God, it's really bright." I'm turning, and right when the truck passed, I'm like, "Okay, great." We're leading into the turn. All of a sudden, the only way I can describe this, the only way I've ever described this, is that the world suddenly stopped making sense. And in reality, I know now what had happened was, so a 5.4 earthquake hit the island right at that exact second. So in reality, what was happening was, we were shaking uncontrollably. I mean, 5.4 is enough to shake down a building. Imagine being on a scooter and you're in the middle of a turn on the top of a hill. Now, when you do a turn, you lean into it and you give it torque to keep you upright. And I think I understood what was happening. I mean, I did and I didn't. It's really hard to explain. It is a bit of a blur, but the reality is there was an earthquake shaking us. So you imagine trying to control a scooter. And even though it was very dark, I could tell if I continued into the turn, whatever was happening at the time, we were going to lose control and wipe out and skid. Now, my friend, she had just shorts. I mean, I had jeans and a denim jacket, but, we would get shredded up. So I was like, "Oh, I'll go straight." I can see there was like a tennis court on the left, well, kind of straight left. And if I go straight, there's a stone pathway. We're not going that fast, maybe 30, 32 kilometers an hour. We weren't going very fast. Plenty of space to stop. So I just go straight, hit the brakes. Why aren't we stopping? I remember thinking to myself, why are we still moving? In reality, we were being shook. So I think we were like, we just couldn't stop. Even though the brakes were applied, we were being moved forward by the ground shaking. And I remember seeing the edge of the cliff. It was like, it was like a ravine because it was a turn and there was a ravine. I remember seeing the edge. And once I realized we were not going to be able to stop, the last thing I said was, "Oh shit, we're going over." And then I woke up. That's the last thing I remember. And we woke up. So this is on 3:15. I know the timeline now. At the time, I didn't. I woke up and it was around 4. And in reality, we had driven off the edge of a ravine, dropped pretty far down, but we dropped into thick bush, which is probably what saved our lives. But I woke up and I was like, okay. And I was thinking to myself, I didn't realize I was very injured. And I was like, Stacy? She's like, yeah. She's like, yeah, I'm here. I'm like, what are we doing outside in the grass? Why are we not in the hotel? And I'm like, wait, did we get drunk and go outside in the grass? No. Oh, let's go inside. I go up and I'm like, Stacy? She's like, yeah. I'm like, pretty sure my wrist is broken and I think my neck is broken. Uh, what's going on? She's like, my wrist is broken too. And I'm like, and all of a sudden, in reality, I had a fractured skull. So, uh, I think, not knowing, like when you have that shock, you don't know what's going on. So all of a sudden we were like, okay, what's going on? And all of a sudden it came flushing back and I'm like, oh my God, we drove off the edge of a cliff. I'm like, oh my God, we're in a ravine and everything kind of, it just kind of, we all figured out, okay, we've been serious in accident, we've been injured. And I'm like, I was like, well, um, my neck wasn't broken. I had injured it. The first X-ray they said I had cracked a vertebrae, but I didn't know it felt broken. I was like, okay, I could move everything. Nothing's not paralyzed, but I couldn't like in reality, we were on a very steep incline. I didn't realize how steep it was. I was like, we have to climb up and get to the road to get help. I was too injured to move. I realized I couldn't, my actual injuries, I didn't know at the time, my actual injuries were uh my left wrist was I had a distal radial fracture. Because when I was driving the scooter and we hit the ground, I'm assuming what happened was my body hit the console. She hit my body and her face hit the back of my helmet. Um, and it was, of course, the one time the helmet that we had rented, it kept getting stuck. So for this 8-minute drive home, I put my helmet on, but I didn't strap it because it was taking 3, 4 minutes to get it off. I was like, oh, I'll get a different helmet when I get back to the hotel. So my helmet had gone flying actually. So when I woke up, I didn't have my helmet. Um, and so I think what happens, she hit her face against my helmet. She had cracked or fractured her jaw and broken her nose and broken her wrist. But I had bruises on my back from where I think her body impacted with mine, and then I impacted with the front of the scooter. So I had 4 cracked ribs, um, both lungs had collapsed, lacerated liver, perforated bowel, broken wrist, and a distal radial skull fracture. I think from her helmet hitting my head after my helmet flew off. So, by the time, you're in shock. I mean, like, I don't remember thinking pain was an issue. I remember thinking, oh, this is uncomfortable. And I do remember thinking for a minute, I'm like, okay, once I realized how serious injuries were, I was also bleeding internally. I didn't know that. And I was like, I think this actually might be it. And the crazy part is the weirdness of that was I was kind of not okay with it, but I was calm. I was only afraid for her because she was afraid. And I was like, no, we're gonna find a way out of this because like I tried to move, I couldn't move, and I had realized much later that even if I was in perfect health, I wouldn't have been able to climb out of there, especially in pitch black on that steep of a hill. She couldn't get up and move, so I was like, we need to get help. I had 2 phones with me. One was my American phone, well, both American phones, but one had a brand new local SIM card, fully charged battery. That one went flying somewhere into the ravine. I had another phone, which thankfully is in my inner pocket. It was my American phone. At the time, you didn't have the international options we have now, but I could turn on international data. But it had a battery that was draining quickly, and I had internet, but my main concern was that it was at like 42%, and this is my old phone, so the battery would drain quickly. So I turned on my international data. I'm like, we're gonna call for help. As soon as my international plan came on, all of course, all your messages, bling, 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 they all come in. And so I immediately started responding to people. I'm like, and so my first thing that was on my work chat. I texted my coworker. I'm like, hey, look, I've been in an accident. I need help. And then of course, friends started texting me, hey, what's going on? How's Bali? I'm like, hey guys, I've been in an accident. I don't know what's going on. So my first thought was like, I actually didn't know what the number for 911 is. And of course, now I know it's 211 is the number for most countries. So I didn't know how to dial for help. And I didn't realize at the time with an iPhone, so you hit the side button 5 times, it actually calls whatever the local emergency service is. I didn't know that. So I was like, I need to find a way to get help. And I don't know what made me think of this, but I just got on, I'm sitting there like I'm this blood coming out of my nose, dripping on my phone. I wasn't bleeding, but it was blood coming out. So I'm trying to wipe blood from my phone. I was like, I had a bunch of Facebook messages that kept popping up, and I was like, I just put on a Facebook post that said, um, I believe it said, "Endangered, need help, call police." And it was not probably not the most descriptive, because I was also like, I was half conscious and trying to like, I had one, like my wrist was kind of, I mean, I didn't realize it was broken, so I'm trying to function and not drop the phone because I dropped it, that's it, and like, um. I think actually one of the reasons was actually alive is because I had slid into like a nook in the ground that kept me from sliding further. Had I slid completely down the ravine, I would have slid over the edge and into a waterfall and died probably. So I'm trying to like not move because I can hear the waterfall. Anyway, so I make this post, and of course people start responding. And so I immediately just, because that was my intention. I was like, I need to get people to respond and get as much word out that I'm in trouble and I don't know how to call for help. So of course people start responding. So I start sending everyone, here's my GPS. I need help. And people literally, because that's going back to all the friends I've made. I think at the time I had, yeah, at least 2,500 friends, and people from, I mean, Australia, Prague, United States, Portugal, South America, all over the world. All my friends that saw it, and they all started calling the embassy, State Department. I had a few friends who, within quite a few minutes, were like, "We're on hold with the State Department. We have your GPS. We're making calls." And yeah, I had quite a few friends who actually got through because it was still daytime in the United States. It was 3 or 4 it was 4 in the morning Bali time, and it was still 4 p.m. the previous day in the United States, especially. So it was not hard for people to get a hold of authorities. And yeah, so sure enough, I had a few friends, my friend Josh, my friend Amy, and a few other friends who, as my battery is draining, were coming back and saying, we've gotten a hold of people, they're making calls, you're going to be, they're going to start looking for you. Like, they've got your GPS. And then they got to the point where my battery started draining. And I was like, all right, I have to actually stop responding to messages because like I got to save whatever power I have. 'Cause especially once people were like, okay, we got the ball rolling. Uh, Make sure you got in the juice. So I actually had to stop responding to messages. And like there was the comments to that post where people were following, because as people were getting information and getting through to people, they were posting on the comments, okay, now we've gotten a hold of this, like it was kind of like keeping tracks. At some point, I think someone said, "Hey guys, stop responding because we're using this comment now to keep everyone abreast of what's going on." And sure enough, yeah, like I think about an hour and a half later, finally a couple of friends were like, "You're going to start getting texts from the American embassy in Bali, well, from like a representative from the embassy." And sure enough, these two folks, one guy named Joe, I forget the other woman's name at this point. Yeah, I started texting. They're saying, "Hey, we know you're in danger. We've got your GPS. Send it to us so we also have it. But help us on the way. Just hang tight." And at that point, then the battery was at like 2%, and so like. But we got confirmation that people on the ground, Americans and locals on the ground, knew that we were in danger, knew where we were, and they were like, just hang tight. We got, so the battery died. I told Stacy, I'm like, we're gonna be okay. She was definitely still scared. Like, no, 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 we're gonna be fine. I didn't know if we really were, but I had a feeling. And then sure enough, around I think it was around 6:30, we heard people. And the thing is, we weren't in the middle of nowhere. We were in, I mean, there was a Hindu temple across the street, and so there were worshipers who were coming in the morning, but also like the word had gotten out. So yeah, around 6:30, people showed up, and these four local guys pulled us up. I said, get Stacy first because it was easier. And then for me, I was like, I was like, make sure and cradle my neck because I thought it was broken. So they pulled us out, and at like 6 in the morning on a Sunday, the only thing available was a flatbed truck. So they took us to the local hospital, and that's when they said, "Oh yeah, you guys need to go to the main hospital in Bali." And they took us to the Australian hospital in Bali, and that's where Stacy was there for 6 days. I was there for 10. I had quite a few surgeries, but it's fine. I mean, like I woke up 2.5 days later. My sister was there and my friends were there, and we had all the comments. And then at that point, I had a friend from Atlanta who wanted to. She works for CNN and worked with CNN, wanted to get the story out. And then another buddy of mine who worked with CNN also put the story out, and it kind of took off. And all of a sudden, we were in the front page of Yahoo News for a few days. And I guess the whole point of the stories were like, Yeah, it was because we made this Facebook post and people around the world got into action. I mean, we were rescued. I mean, if you went over on 315 and rescued about 6:30, we weren't there for that long. It seemed like forever, but given that our injuries were not life-threatening, but they were at the time severe, that we were able to get help and get medical attention pretty fairly quickly. Uh, and then it just kind of became the story. And, we were on Reader's Digest we're actually on if we're in the print edition. I remember it was sometime later in May, so they have a whole story on us. They made all these cool illustrations, and you can view it online actually. And yeah, so we had this big stories that, and it got to the point I actually did want to stop doing interviews after a while because Stacy and I we were like, okay, we've survived this, and we don't want to talk about it anymore. I mean, I'm fine talking about it now, but got to the point where, as interesting as it was to get exposure, we were just like, all right, we don't want this. It was still traumatic for us, and we don't want to relive it. But we obviously came through. Everyone was okay, and I was recovered within 3 months, and then 6 months after, crazy enough, Stacy and I, we were like, I mean, at the point we'd both been recovered. I mean, the injuries, like I said, they were pretty dire at the time, but they were injuries that were easy to recover from. Had a bit of PT on my wrist for a few months. Everything else. I mean, for the most part, we were both just banged up. I mean, end of the day, that was we were just banged up. So, in 6 months, she was leaving her job in Korea, and just as before, I had my visa was up, and she was like, you know, we didn't get to travel together because we had the injury, we had the accident on our very first night. She's like, we should, now that we're okay, now that we've been taken care of, we should, redo it. And I'm like, do you want to do the trip again in the way it should have been? She's like, yeah. So we went back to Asia, and we actually went back to Bali, and we actually stayed in the same hotel, and we drove past the place where it happened every day. Like the first day we sat there, we hugged, we had a little cry, and we're like, all right, this is the spot, it didn't get us, and it's crazy because we walked around in the daytime the spot and we realized, oh my God, how the hell did we survive this? I mean, because when we looked at it from the bottom and in the daytime we were just like, holy crap, we drove off the edge of that and lived. But yeah, but then we did like Hong Kong, Bali, we went all the way to Australia. I think we went to Thailand too. It was fun. We got to do this trip together, and it was a really good bonding experience. And we've been good friends since then. I mean, we don't see each other too often. We hung out in 2023 in Portugal. She came to visit, and we still talk on a regular. I definitely need to go visit her soon. Um, so it was a fun. It was fun to kind of like take this thing that could have been a tragedy and turn it into like the adventure it was supposed to be. And also kind of have this kind of harrowing story to tell. You know, yeah. So that's the adventure. That's the one time I almost died in the 74 countries. I've definitely had a few interesting run-ins. Some in Vietnam, some motorcycle bikers tried to rob us. They did not succeed. Otherwise, never really had any other major issues on any places around the world. I mean, the world is actually a much safer, much more fun place than people would have you believe. That's another takeaway I can say from traveling the world for so long is that most places, even places that people say are bad, are actually just perfectly fine. And people are amazing. And the people in Bali were just so incredibly helpful and we were there was it was a very comforting experience. Once we were rescued and it's something that I have to say gave me a really good impression of the country afterwards. And I'm glad I've been back since. I haven't been back now in a while, but I definitely want to go back. Hopefully in the uh, winter or the new year, I'll be heading back to Asia for the first time since COVID. So I will probably definitely swing by Bali again. Yeah.
Mikey, thank you. I mean, thank you for sharing that story again. Like you said, you shared it a lot, but it really shows, such resilience, but such, bravery, but still like a curiosity about the world and wanting to keep going. And I think it's so beautiful that you guys went
Yeah.
back, you redid the
Yeah.
trip anyway. And from what
Yeah.
we've heard
Speaking
at the
of,
beginning, it hasn't stopped you traveling at all, and it may have
no,
stopped
no,
some
I
people.
didn't.
but it's like
Yeah, I didn't have
it
any.
should still be going.
Yeah, I
And
mean, yeah, I wouldn't say I don't have any PTSD. I mean, I went back to Thailand later on my next trip to Asia. Since then, I ran scooters again. I mean, I still drive motorcycles to this day. That never was an issue. I mean, the only guilt, grief, PTSD I have from that incident was that, uh, that I could have maybe killed my friend because I was trying to impress her by being like, let's take a motorcycle, let's be cool. And so that was on me, trying to be the cool guy you know, uh, and that, even though it was a situation beyond our control, it's still, there's still a bit of guilt there, but no, it didn't otherwise stop my travels. If anything, the fact that we went and did it again and did it together as friends and it really bonded us actually, I think in a way is a good thing, so it's, also one of the big things about traveling too and living remotely and living in other places is that yeah, you do meet these people, you meet these friends. I mean, like, from our Lisbon community, you guys are my second family. And it all came from just one day being in Lisbon and realizing, oh, you guys are fun. I'm going to come back here and hang out with you more often and make experiences, of which we've had plenty. Mostly good.
uh, I
Yeah.
think one of the biggest takeaways from this, besides, getting back out there when things happen to you, is that, like, you start conversations, you make the first move. Like you said, you were one of these people that, didn't have your phone, didn't grow up with your phone. And I think people are kind of forgetting sometimes about you still can, like, start the conversation, put yourself out there
Yeah.
and see what
Oh, yeah.
happens. And because we all keep
And most
traveling,
people,
keep
yeah, and
connecting.
most people want you to talk to them. They want to be connected with. And it's like, I don't
Yes.
think most people realize that's the big secret to being social. It's just like, most people actually don't like, they want you to come say, like, at least I think they want you to come have a friendly conversation and engage, you know. It's not as hard as we would like to think, especially when you're on the road. It's the one thing you crave is that connection because the loneliness really does get to you. And if you have someone to share the adventure with, it makes it's a whole 180, and that's what keeps you going. It's like, oh, it's almost like the connections you make, it's almost like a dopamine rush. You want to chase that dragon, of like, oh, new people, new places, new people. So
I
yeah.
think you've just uncovered another thing a lot of us nomads and remote workers share. Yeah, at
Yeah.
the heart of it, just more connection, more people. So,
Yeah.
Mikey, I want to thank you so much for sharing all your
Of course,
adventures
yeah.
with us today.
More
And
than happy to.
where can people follow you, or if they want to see
Uh,
next, where can they go?
I mean, at this point, Instagram really is, at Mike Lythcott is the Instagram that I use. I know I haven't posted a lot of stuff. I mean, well, I post regularly. Um, I try to keep it limited to dad jokes and travel stuff. I try to keep the politics off, even though once in a while I will squeeze something in there. But I try to keep it as a outlet for uh, travels and fun stuff that I do. So that's usually the place you can find me these days. Yeah. So that's my life. And if anybody wants to follow and see what I'm doing and see some bad dad jokes, I'm not a dad, but I love telling dad jokes. And
Or
I
very
feel like
likely, we're going to meet you on the road. You're going to be the one
yeah,
starting the conversation.
exactly. Yeah. And whenever I'm traveling, that's usually when I post a lot because I will post daily updates from the places I'm going. And so yeah, so right now, like I said, I've got Brazil and Cape Verde up next. And then well, actually, I'm pushing it back now to October. Well, in September, I'll be in Lisbon. And then October, I'm doing South Africa, Tanzania, Kenya, Ethiopia, and hopefully Ghana. And I actually might swing over and do Egypt for the second time because Egypt is one of my I think one of the questions you wanted to ask is what's last or what's next on the bucket list? And Egypt, I've already done, but it's such a cool place. I was there for 2.5 weeks and I didn't see half of what I wanted to see because I'm a huge fan of just like ancient stuff. Like that's like especially ancient Egypt. Like that's like one of my favorite. Like Roman and Egyptian are some of my favorite ancient stuff. I also like Peruvian, and I'm really interested in seeing a lot of the old African stuff. I'm actually really curious to go to Ethiopia. That's actually one of the big places on my list. Ethiopia is just such a rich history. And the biggest one that I'm going to be doing probably next year that I've been saving for years is India. Because India is one of those trips you don't just go for 2 weeks. That's a whole separate trip in itself. So that's kind of where I'm at now is I want to really get more into Africa. Um, and then the big shebang is going to be like India, like top to bottom for maybe 2 months, and do it
Amazing.
slow because India has so many different. You got the Portuguese part, but obviously the British part, the French part. You got such a different array of food and culture. So that's like that's the really big goal for when I get a good chunk of time off.
Well,
Saving up for that one now.
I hope you have a blast, Mikey. All the best on your travels. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Beckett.
You.
See you in
Mike
Lisbon.
it?
I'll see you in Lisbon
Yeah.
in May. See you there.
See you in May. Bye.
All right.